The strongest people are rarely the loudest. They're the ones who step forward when everyone else steps back. Vanessa Carter adjusted the worn canvas strap of her cleaning supply bag as she crossed the polished marble floor of Brookhaven Galleria, one of the most exclusive shopping centers in downtown Chicago. Sunlight streamed through towering glass skylights, scattering warm reflections across designer storefronts where luxury handbags, sparkling jewelry, and tailored suits filled immaculate displays that seemed worlds away from her own life. She had just finished an early housekeeping shift in a nearby office building and was cutting through the mall to catch the city bus that would take her to her second job. Her paycheck covered rent, her mother's medication, and little else, but she carried herself with quiet dignity, offering gentle smiles to strangers who rarely noticed her existence. The lunchtime crowd moved in restless waves, expensive shoes clicking across the glossy floor while conversations blended into a constant hum. Vanessa barely looked up until a frightened voice, small enough to disappear beneath the noise, drifted across the corridor. "I'm sorry. I couldn't see." Something in those words stopped her cold. Near the entrance of a luxury boutique stood a little girl no older than 9, her white mobility cane lying several feet away after accidentally slipping from her hand. Dark sunglasses covered her eyes, and she reached carefully through empty air, searching for the cane while trying to keep her balance. A designer shopping bag rested against an elegant woman's expensive heels, one corner slightly crumpled from the accidental bump. The woman's face twisted with irritation that seemed wildly out of proportion to the harmless mistake. "Do you have any idea what you've done?" she snapped loudly enough for nearby shoppers to turn their heads. The little girl flinched but remained astonishingly polite. "I'm really sorry, ma'am. I didn't mean to." Instead of softening, the woman stepped closer, lifting one hand as though she intended to deliver a humiliating lesson rather than simple words. Around them, people slowed, stared, and then looked away. Some pretended to examine store windows. Others lowered their eyes and kept walking. No one wanted to become involved. Vanessa felt an old ache tighten inside her chest, a memory she had spent years trying to bury. She remembered another frightened child, another crowded place, another moment when everyone had chosen silence. She had promised herself that if life ever placed her in that position again, she would never stand still. Her heartbeat quickened, but her feet were already moving before fear could catch up. "Please," Vanessa said calmly as she stepped between the woman and the little girl, her voice steady despite the uncertainty in her stomach. "She's just a child." The woman stared at her as though she had interrupted something she had no right to question. "Move," she said sharply. Vanessa didn't. Instead, she gently reached behind her without taking her eyes off the woman until her fingertips found the little girl's trembling hand. "You're okay," she whispered softly. "Stay behind me." The little girl's tiny fingers wrapped around Vanessa's hand with desperate trust. For one suspended moment, the bustling mall seemed to fall strangely quiet. Conversations faded. Footsteps slowed. Every eye settled on the unexpected stranger who had quietly chosen courage over comfort, completely unaware that somewhere above them, hidden behind rows of security monitors, someone had already stopped watching the cameras for business reasons and started watching because of her. Vanessa could feel dozens of strangers watching, yet the silence around them felt heavier than the crowd itself. The elegant woman lowered her hand, not because her anger had disappeared, but because someone unexpected had interrupted the scene. Her eyes traveled slowly from Vanessa's inexpensive sneakers to the faded housekeeping uniform beneath her light jacket, and a cold smile appeared. "You work for a living cleaning other people's messes. Do not tell me how to handle mine," she said with quiet contempt. A few uncomfortable laughs escaped from nearby shoppers who were relieved that the attention was no longer on them. Vanessa ignored every pair of curious eyes. She kept one hand gently around the little girl's shoulder while bending just enough to retrieve the white mobility cane from the polished floor. She carefully placed it back into the child's waiting hand. "Here you go, sweetheart," she said softly. "You did nothing wrong." The little girl wrapped both hands around the cane and took a slow breath. "Thank you," she whispered. "People get angry when I bump into things." Vanessa smiled with warmth that seemed completely out of place inside the expensive shopping center. Everybody bumps into something sometimes. Yours just happens to be something you cannot see. The child gave the smallest smile, one filled with relief rather than happiness. The elegant woman's expression hardened even further. She damaged my shopping bag. Vanessa looked at the barely creased corner and then back at the woman. I believe it was an accident. That is not for you to decide. Her voice became sharper, drawing even more attention. People should learn responsibility. Vanessa answered without raising her voice. Responsibility should never begin with humiliating a child. Those words landed with surprising weight. Several shoppers exchanged uneasy glances, but no one stepped forward. A young store employee shifted nervously behind the display window before disappearing inside, without saying anything. An older couple quietly stopped walking, watching from several yards away. The little girl tightened her grip on Vanessa's sleeve. I am Lily, she whispered. Are you leaving too? Vanessa looked down with gentle concern. Not until you are safe. Lily hesitated before speaking again. My uncle always tells me that good people sound calm. You sound calm. Vanessa felt an unexpected ache behind her smile. Your uncle sounds very wise. Before Lily could answer, her small fingers brushed the front pocket of her cardigan, searching for something. Instead, she accidentally dropped a tiny silver charm onto the marble floor. It rolled several feet away before stopping near the polished shoes of a passing security supervisor. He picked it up, studying the engraved family crest with a puzzled expression before handing it back to Lily. His polite smile vanished. For only a fraction of a second, replaced by unmistakable recognition. Without saying a word, he reached for the radio clipped to his shoulder and quietly stepped aside. Vanessa noticed none of it. Her attention remained entirely on helping Lily feel steady again. High above the crowded corridor, inside a private security office lined with glowing surveillance screens, a calm voice interrupted the room. Replay the last 2 minutes. Every technician immediately obeyed. The footage rolled backward in perfect silence as a tall man dressed in a tailored black suit stood with his hands folded behind his back, his expression unreadable while his eyes remained fixed on the woman who had chosen to protect someone she had never met. The security supervisor spoke quietly into his radio, careful not to draw attention, yet within seconds subtle changes rippled through the shopping center. 2 additional supervisors appeared near opposite entrances, not rushing, simply observing. Vanessa noticed only that employees suddenly seemed unusually attentive, but she assumed they were responding to the growing crowd. Her focus never left Lily. Are you feeling better? She asked gently. Lily nodded, brushing one small hand across the smooth handle of her white cane. I get lost sometimes when places are loud, she admitted. Everything sounds the same. Vanessa looked around at the polished stone walls, the high glass ceiling, and the constant echo of footsteps bouncing through the enormous atrium. She understood exactly what Lily meant. Even people with perfect eyesight could feel overwhelmed inside a place built to impress rather than comfort. Would you like to sit down for a minute? Vanessa asked. Lily smiled. Only if you sit with me. Vanessa carefully guided her toward a nearby wooden bench surrounded by large indoor trees whose green leaves softened the expensive surroundings. As they sat together, the tension that had filled the corridor slowly gave way to a quieter kind of attention. People continued watching from a distance, curiosity replacing judgment. Some whispered among themselves. Others looked embarrassed that they had remained silent earlier. The elegant woman folded her arms impatiently, clearly expecting someone to remove Vanessa instead of allowing the situation to continue. Lily tilted her head slightly. You sound tired, she said unexpectedly. Vanessa laughed softly. Do I? Lily nodded. My music teacher says tired people breathe differently. Vanessa looked down with surprised admiration. Your teacher sounds very smart. He says when you cannot see faces, you learn to hear hearts. Those simple words settled deeply inside Vanessa. For a brief moment, they reminded her of evenings years earlier when she used to read bedtime stories to her younger sister before illness stole those quiet routines forever. She had learned then that kindness was often the only thing people remembered after fear disappeared. That lesson had stayed with her long after the hospital rooms and sleepless nights became memories. What is your favorite story? Vanessa asked. Lily smiled brighter than before. The ones where good people never know they are heroes. Vanessa looked away for a moment, blinking back unexpected emotion. Most heroes probably do not. Several yards away, the security supervisor lowered his radio after receiving new instructions. His posture immediately straightened. Every employee nearby quietly stepped back as though making space for someone important. Yet no announcements echoed through the mall. No alarms sounded. The atmosphere simply shifted, becoming strangely respectful. Inside the private security office, the man in the black suit watched another replay from a different camera angle. This time he studied Vanessa instead of the confrontation. She had not asked anyone to record her. She had not looked around for approval. She had not even attempted to explain herself after helping Lily. Every decision she made appeared instinctive, quiet, and sincere. One of his senior advisors finally broke the silence. "Should we bring Miss Brooks upstairs now?" The man continued watching the screen for another long moment before answering in a calm voice. "Not yet." His eyes never left Vanessa as Lily reached for her hand again with complete trust. "I want to know who protects a frightened child when they believe nobody important is watching." The atmosphere inside Brookhaven Galleria continued to change in ways that most shoppers could not explain. Conversations became quieter. Employees who usually hurried between stores suddenly stood a little straighter whenever they passed the central corridor. Vanessa noticed only fragments of the shift because Lily had begun telling stories about her music lessons, describing melodies as colors instead of sounds. Vanessa listened with genuine interest, smiling every time Lily's imagination transformed ordinary experiences into something beautiful. "My piano teacher says blue sounds peaceful," Lily said, tracing invisible circles across the smooth handle of her cane. "What color does your favorite song sound like?" Vanessa thought for a moment before answering. "Warm gold, like sunlight coming through a kitchen window early in the morning." Lily smiled. "I think I would like that color." Across the atrium, the elegant woman remained visibly irritated that the attention she expected had never arrived. She quietly approached a customer service employee and demanded a manager, speaking with exaggerated confidence while pointing toward Vanessa and Lily. The young employee nodded politely, but instead of calling the store manager, she received a different instruction through her earpiece. Her expression shifted from routine professionalism to careful respect. "Someone will assist you shortly, ma'am," she replied. Meanwhile, inside the private security office overlooking the entire complex, Daniel Kong stood before an entire wall of surveillance screens. His tailored charcoal suit fit with effortless precision, and the silver watch on his wrist reflected the glow of dozens of monitors. He watched every angle without speaking. One screen showed Vanessa helping Lily recover her cane. Another captured the frightened child reaching for Vanessa's hand. A third revealed the surrounding crowd, choosing observation instead of compassion. His chief of security quietly placed a digital tablet beside him. "We completed the identification." Daniel glanced at the report only briefly. Vanessa Carter, 28 years old. 2 jobs. No criminal history. Primary caregiver for her mother. Excellent employment references. Daniel continued watching the video instead of reading further. Did she know who Lily was? There is no indication of that, sir. Daniel folded his hands behind his back. Run facial recognition on everyone who stood nearby. Already in progress. The room returned to complete silence except for the soft hum of computer servers. Daniel had spent years learning that character revealed itself most clearly when people believed their actions carried no consequences. Wealth could purchase appearances. Power could command obedience. Fear could force temporary respect. But genuine compassion could never be negotiated. It appeared only when there was nothing to gain. Down below, Lily suddenly lifted her head. Her expression brightened before anyone else noticed the faint rhythm echoing through the marble corridors. Vanessa heard nothing unusual, but Lily smiled with complete certainty. "He is here," she whispered. Vanessa looked around, confused. "Who is here?" Lily's smile grew even wider. "My uncle." At that exact moment, the polished glass doors at the main entrance opened without fanfare. Several men in dark suits entered first, moving with calm discipline rather than intimidation. Behind them walked a tall Korean man whose composed expression seemed almost unreadable. He did not hurry. He did not speak. Yet every employee who recognized him instinctively stepped aside with quiet respect. Vanessa still had no idea who he was. She simply noticed that the entire shopping center had suddenly become so silent she could hear the gentle tapping of Lily's cane against the marble floor as the little girl stood and whispered with absolute certainty, "He always finds me." The little girl's smile became brighter with every measured footstep echoing across the marble floor. She released Vanessa's hand for only a moment before turning toward the sound with complete confidence, her face filled with the kind of trust that could never be rehearsed. "Uncle Daniel," she called gently. The tall man stopped several feet away, and for the first time his composed expression softened. "I am here, Lily," he answered in a calm voice that carried effortlessly through the suddenly silent corridor. Lily walked toward him without hesitation, guided only by the sound of his voice. Daniel met her halfway, kneeling so she could easily wrap her arms around him. He returned the embrace with quiet affection before carefully brushing a loose strand of hair away from her face. "Did anyone frighten you?" he asked. Lily nodded slightly, but did not sound afraid anymore. "A lady was angry because I bumped into her bag. Then Miss Vanessa helped me." Daniel slowly lifted his eyes toward Vanessa. She stood a respectful distance away, uncertain whether she should leave or remain where she was. Their eyes met for only a brief second, yet Vanessa sensed an unusual calm about him, the kind carried by someone completely comfortable with responsibility. She offered a small smile. She was very brave, Vanessa said. She only needed someone to remind her that accidents happen. Daniel studied her without interruption. There was no judgment in his expression, only careful observation. He then looked toward the elegant woman, who had suddenly lost much of her earlier confidence. "Is there something that needs to be explained?" he asked politely. Before she could answer, the security supervisor stepped forward with remarkable professionalism. "Sir, the security footage has already been preserved." Several shoppers exchanged puzzled glances. Preserved for whom? Why was every employee addressing this quiet man with such unmistakable respect? The elegant woman forced a practiced smile. "This has all been a misunderstanding. Your niece accidentally damaged my shopping bag, and this woman decided to interfere." Daniel did not immediately respond. Instead, he turned back toward Lily. "Did Miss Vanessa speak kindly to you?" Lily nodded without hesitation. "She told me I did nothing wrong. She stayed even when everyone else watched." Daniel's attention returned to Vanessa. "Is that true?" Vanessa looked almost embarrassed by the question. Any decent person would have done the same. One of the senior security officers lowered his eyes slightly, unable to hide his reaction to those words. Daniel noticed. So did several employees who had witnessed the entire encounter from beginning to end. The silence that followed became almost impossible to ignore. Finally, Daniel spoke again, his voice as calm as before. "Unfortunately, not everyone does." He stood, still holding Lily's hand, and glanced briefly toward his chief of security. No dramatic gesture followed. No raised voice disturbed the peaceful atmosphere. The chief simply gave a nearly invisible nod before quietly walking toward the surveillance office, already understanding what would happen next. Vanessa remained completely unaware of the influence this reserved man carried. To her, he was simply a caring uncle comforting his niece. But throughout the shopping center, employees were already exchanging discreet looks because they understood something Vanessa did not. Daniel Kong almost never asked to review security footage unless he intended to learn every detail before making a decision. And when he chose to uncover the truth, nothing important was ever overlooked. Daniel did not move for several long seconds. The silence surrounding him seemed to spread across the entire shopping center until even the distant conversations from nearby restaurants faded into the background. He looked first at Lily, then at Vanessa, and finally toward the elegant woman whose confidence had begun to disappear beneath the growing uncertainty. Before anyone reaches a conclusion, Daniel said evenly, "I prefer to understand exactly what happened." His tone was calm, almost gentle, but every employee nearby immediately recognized it as a request that was not meant to be ignored. The chief of security returned carrying a digital tablet. Without speaking, he opened several synchronized camera angles that had captured the entire incident from beginning to end. Daniel watched every second without interruption. He saw Lily accidentally brush the shopping bag while searching for her cane. He saw Vanessa step forward without hesitation. He saw the surrounding crowd choose distance instead of compassion. Most importantly, he noticed something that could not be staged. Vanessa never looked around to see who was watching before. She acted. She had simply responded to a frightened child. Daniel replayed one particular moment twice. The instant Vanessa quietly placed herself between Lily and embarrassment while offering nothing more than a calm voice and reassuring words. He lowered the tablet. "Was there any damage to the bag?" he asked. The security supervisor answered honestly. "No, sir. Only a slight crease that disappeared after the bag was lifted." Daniel nodded once. "Thank you." He then turned towards several shoppers who had remained nearby since the beginning. "Would anyone like to tell me what they witnessed?" An older gentleman stepped forward first. The little girl apologized immediately. A young mother holding her son's hand spoke next. Miss Carter was the first person who tried to comfort her. Another customer quietly admitted, "Most of us should have done something sooner." Daniel listened without interrupting a single person. Every answer painted the same picture. No one described Vanessa seeking attention. No one claimed she had escalated the situation. Every witness remembered her kindness before anything else. Daniel finally faced Vanessa again. "Miss Carter, did you know who Lily was before today?" Vanessa looked genuinely surprised by the question. "No, sir. I only knew she needed help." "Did you expect anything in return?" She almost smiled at the idea. "No. I was simply hoping she would stop feeling afraid." Lily reached for Vanessa's hand again, as though those words confirmed everything she had already sensed. Daniel noticed the gesture immediately. Trust could not be purchased, and children rarely offered it without reason. He looked down at his niece. "Would you like to go home now?" Lily gently shook her head. "Not yet. I want Miss Vanessa to stay a little longer." For the first time that afternoon, the faintest hint of a smile appeared on Daniel's face. It disappeared almost as quickly as it had come, replaced once again by quiet composure. He handed the tablet back to his chief of security before speaking in the same calm voice that never needed to become louder. "The facts are clear. Now it is time to make certain that everyone involved is treated with the fairness they deserved from the very beginning." No one argued after Daniel spoke. His voice remained measured, yet it carried the unmistakable confidence of someone who never relied on volume to be heard. The elegant woman attempted one final smile, hoping to recover the situation before it slipped completely beyond her control. "I believe this has simply become larger than it needed to be," she said politely. "We can all move on." Daniel regarded her calmly for a moment before answering. Moving on without honesty only guarantees that the same mistake will happen again. He turned to the chief of security. "Please invite the general manager." Within less than a minute, the shopping center manager arrived, adjusting his suit jacket as he hurried across the polished floor. The moment he recognized Daniel, his confident expression immediately gave way to respectful concern. "Good afternoon, Mr. Kong," he said. "I was informed there was an incident." Daniel nodded slightly. "There was an opportunity." The manager looked confused. Daniel continued. "An opportunity to demonstrate how your guests are treated when they are vulnerable." The manager lowered his eyes. The surrounding employees remained perfectly still. Daniel gestured toward Lily. A child entered this building expecting a safe place. He then looked toward Vanessa. A stranger provided that safety before anyone employed here did. His words were never accusatory, yet each sentence carried undeniable weight. The manager quietly asked the security supervisor to explain the timeline. Every detail matched the surveillance footage. Every witness confirmed the same sequence of events. When the explanation ended, the manager walked toward Vanessa. "Miss Carter," he said sincerely, "on behalf of Brookhaven Galleria, I owe you an apology. You showed our values more clearly than we did today." Vanessa seemed almost uncomfortable receiving attention. "I only helped because it felt like the right thing to do." Daniel answered before anyone else could speak. "That is exactly why it matters." The elegant woman shifted uneasily. "Surely this is unnecessary," she insisted. "It was only a misunderstanding." Daniel met her gaze without hostility. A misunderstanding ends when someone apologizes after learning the truth. His words hung quietly in the air. Several seconds passed before the woman finally looked toward Lily. "I am sorry," she said, her voice noticeably softer than before. She then turned toward Vanessa. "I judged you unfairly. I apologize for that as well." Vanessa accepted the apology with a gentle nod rather than triumph. "Thank you," she replied simply. There was no desire to embarrass anyone further. That unexpected grace seemed to affect the crowd even more than the apology itself. Daniel noticed it immediately. The manager then addressed his staff. "Beginning today, every employee will receive additional accessibility and guest care training. We will also review our response procedures so that no child or vulnerable guest is ever left standing alone again." Several employees nodded with genuine agreement. The promise felt meaningful because it followed accountability instead of excuses. Lily smiled as she listened, squeezing Vanessa's hand once more. "See," she whispered happily. "Good people help other people become better." Daniel heard those words clearly. For the first time since entering the shopping center, he allowed himself a quiet smile, realizing that the greatest lesson taught that afternoon had not come from authority, wealth, or influence. It had come from an ordinary woman who had chosen compassion without expecting anyone to remember her name. As the small crowd slowly dispersed, the atmosphere inside Brookhaven Galleria no longer felt tense. The polished marble floors reflected warm afternoon sunlight, and ordinary conversations gradually returned, yet something had quietly changed in the people who had witnessed the encounter. Vanessa glanced at the clock above the central atrium and realized she was already running late for her second job. She gave Lily's hand one last reassuring squeeze before offering an apologetic smile. "I should get going," she said gently. "Someone else is probably wondering where their housekeeper disappeared to." Lily's smile faded immediately. "Do you have to leave already?" Vanessa nodded with quiet regret. "Responsibilities do not usually wait for us." Lily lowered her head for a moment before asking softly, "Will I ever see you again?" Vanessa hesitated because she did not believe in making promises she could not keep. "Life has a funny way of surprising us," she answered kindly. "So I hope we will." Before she could turn away, Daniel spoke. "Miss Carter." She looked back. "Would you allow me a few minutes of your time?" Vanessa agreed with a polite nod, assuming he simply wanted to thank her once more. Daniel guided Lily toward a quieter seating area beneath a large skylight, where sunlight filtered through green branches from the indoor trees. His security team remained respectfully several yards away, giving them privacy without ever appearing inattentive. Daniel waited until Lily was comfortably seated before speaking. "The report my staff prepared tells me that you work 2 jobs. Vanessa looked slightly embarrassed. "That is true. And your mother requires ongoing medical treatment." She blinked with surprise, but did not seem offended. "Yes, she does." Daniel spoke with complete honesty. "I asked because I wanted to understand the person who protected my niece without expecting anything in return." Vanessa answered simply. "I did not protect her because of who she belongs to. I protected her because she needed someone." Daniel inclined his head slightly. "I know. That is exactly what impressed me." Lily reached toward Vanessa again, smiling as soon as she found her hand. "She makes everything feel less scary," the little girl said, "even when nothing changes." Daniel watched the exchange carefully. For years, Lily had struggled to trust unfamiliar people, yet after only one afternoon, she seemed completely at ease beside Vanessa. That kind of connection could never be forced. "Miss Carter," Daniel continued, "Lily has tutors, teachers, physicians, and every resource that money can provide. Yet today she reminded me that none of those things can replace genuine kindness." Vanessa remained silent, unsure where the conversation was leading. Daniel reached into the inside pocket of his suit jacket and removed an elegant business card before placing it on the small table between them. "I would like to offer you a position." Vanessa looked at the card but made no move to pick it up. "I am not qualified to work for someone like you." Daniel gave a faint smile. "You misunderstand the qualification I value most." He looked toward Lily, who was still holding Vanessa's hand with quiet contentment. "I am not looking for another employee. I am looking for someone my niece already trusts. Think about it carefully. There is no pressure, no deadline, and no obligation. If you decide to call, the opportunity will be waiting." Vanessa looked from the card to Lily's hopeful expression, then back to Daniel, realizing that the unexpected decision waiting before her had nothing to do with wealth or status, and everything to do with the simple act of kindness she had believed no one important had ever noticed. Vanessa carefully picked up the business card, running her thumb across the embossed lettering without saying a word. She had spent years believing that kindness was simply something people gave away because it was right, never because it might change their own future. Looking at Daniel, she realized he understood that difference. "Thank you," she said quietly. "I cannot promise an answer today." Daniel nodded with complete understanding. The best decisions should never be rushed. Vanessa smiled gratefully before slipping the card into her bag. She gently squeezed Lily's hand one final time and stood to leave. Before she had taken more than 2 steps, Lily called after her in a hopeful voice. "Miss Vanessa?" Vanessa turned immediately. Yes, sweetheart. Lily smiled with the same quiet confidence she had shown from the moment she recognized her uncle's footsteps. Can I give you a hug before you go? Vanessa's eyes softened. Of course you can. She walked back without hesitation and knelt so Lily could easily wrap her small arms around her shoulders. The embrace lasted only a few seconds, but everyone nearby instinctively stopped moving. It was not dramatic. It was not rehearsed. It was simply genuine. When they separated, Lily reached up and gently touched Vanessa's face. You still sound warm, she whispered with a smile. Vanessa laughed softly through the unexpected emotion gathering in her eyes. And you still know how to make people smile. Daniel watched quietly, realizing that his niece had not looked this relaxed with a stranger in a very long time. He stepped forward, and before Vanessa could react, he gave a respectful inclination of his head. It was not a grand gesture meant for an audience. It was a sincere expression of gratitude from one human being to another. Several employees who witnessed the moment exchanged astonished glances. They had seen influential people enter the shopping center countless times, but very few had ever witnessed someone of Daniel's stature offer such simple respect so naturally. Vanessa looked almost embarrassed. You do not have to thank me like that, she said. Daniel answered with complete sincerity. Yes, I do. Titles, success, and influence can open many doors, but none of them can replace character. Today you protected the most important person in my life when you believed no one would ever know. That deserves more than gratitude. It deserves respect. Vanessa lowered her eyes for a moment, humbled by words she had never expected to hear. She wished Lily goodbye one last time before walking toward the main entrance, disappearing gradually into the afternoon sunlight beyond the glass doors. Daniel remained where he was, watching until she was completely out of sight. Lily smiled as she held her uncle's hand. I told you good people always sound calm. Daniel looked down at his niece and smiled gently. You were right. As the ordinary rhythm of the shopping center returned, those who had witnessed the afternoon carried home something far more valuable than an interesting story. They had watched wealth stand beside humility, authority bow before compassion, and quiet courage receive the honor it never sought. And long after the polished marble floors reflected the last light of day, the memory that remained was not the argument, the apology, or even the unexpected meeting. It was the simple truth that dignity does not depend on power, but the greatest power will always recognize true dignity when it sees it.